Well, look, we can talk more about the significance of the US top diplomat being in the Ukrainian capital this Wednesday. Doug, you're our international affairs commentator. Walk us through. There are several things that the US wants to show. This is a symbolic visit as much as any other. What can you tell us?
Yeah, you use the word symbolism, and yes, that photo op, the optics of this visit, just having the Secretary of State, a man, extremely close to the president who consults with him, on a daily basis, standing there shoulder to shoulder with Volodymyr Zelensky at a crucial moment, at a pivotal moment, really, in Russia's war against Ukraine. That in and of itself sort of gives us a framework for the storyline here. Antony Blinken, to be sure, has gone on several occasions since Russia's full-scale invasion back in February 2022. He's been there 4 times in Ukraine, but it's been a year since his last visit to the Ukrainian capital, to Kyiv. And it, like you said, it comes at a time where there's lots of things going on, lots of things to juggle. You mentioned, the Zelensky's removal of his longtime defense minister, Alexei Reznikov, tied to a corruption scandal involving military procurement. Let's boil that down. Well, basically, these allegations of corruption, and not just allegations, but corruption in Ukraine has been a giant talking point, both in European capitals, but also in Washington at a time when everyone is now looking closer at the money going towards Ukraine. More and more questions, especially in a political season, as a U.S. presidential campaign gets underway. People are saying, okay, where's that money going? Is our money going to the right places? Blinken is expected to be unveiling, bringing with him a new $1 billion aid package for Ukraine. And I think what he's basically saying is here showing that, yes, there have been a lot of questions in Washington, but we are still foursquare behind you. The United States is still with Ukraine. He's going to want to send that symbolic signal. And he wants to show Volodymyr Zelensky that he has confidence that Zelensky is fulfilling his promise to crack down, to root out corruption in Ukraine, and perhaps also to try to undercut Blinken's visit, trying to undercut the Ukraine skeptics in the U.S., try to undercut or at least act against this sort of perceived shift or flagging of public opinion in terms of solidarity with Ukraine. So trying to give a morale boost, but also symbolic boost, and a boost by being there. And finally, the counteroffensive, which Ukraine has been very honest about, is a long, grinding slog. Ukraine, right? In recent days, right? We've had the headlines about them breaking through the first line of defense in the east and in the south regions. It's an extremely difficult campaign. I think, once again, Blinken wants to show we still have faith, but he's going to ask some questions as well.
Well, let's stay with that, because you mentioned the skeptics there, and there have been several Western allies who've kind of, asked questions about the pace of this counteroffensive, that it's going quite slowly, certainly in key areas. Bakhmut is a good example. Blinken's expected to announce new military aid, as well as aid to help rebuild Ukraine, which is an important step, something he announced a couple of months ago, I believe in July.
Yeah, the U.S. has been very much, along with the European allies, very much behind the idea that the reconstruction aid, this is something, often reconstruction begins after a war, but they want to also start to pour money into the rebuilding of a lot of the destroyed infrastructure. I mean, the total damage bill is going to be estimated in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And like we said, this is right now a war that by all signs is not about to go away anytime soon and go quietly into the night. They're having to look at the here and now, even as they also project into the future for a post-war Ukraine, whenever that time may come. With Blinken here, though, I really think the driving message is that, the U.S. has given tens of billions. It's now actually over $100 billion in aid, far outpacing the financial and military aid of any other ally of Ukraine's. And like I said, right now in this election season, you have, especially on one side of the Republican Party, there are several candidates right now running to be the Republican nominee, who are in the hawkish wing, the isolationist wing of the Republican Party, the America First wing, which basically says the priorities must be at home, domestically, not with Ukraine. And that is still a line, let's be clear, that most of the American public does not agree with. By a thin majority, most Americans still believe the United States should be throwing its support behind Ukraine. They do believe it is in the United States' national interest to support Ukraine. But like I said, it is a creeping, incipient sort of political line. It's going to get more and more fierce and intense. That's why this moment is so important. That's why Antony Blinken is there right now. Joe Biden's flying off to India for the G20 summit. Perhaps he would have been able to go, but he sends his right-hand man.
Blinken, as you say, in the Ukrainian capital.